Thank you for being here. We're excited to see so many people in the audience. This is fantastic for us. Welcome to our meeting. Today is Thursday, May 5th, 2022. I will open with this. Kaysville City understands the value of recognizing exceptional efforts. Oh, excuse me, wrong one. Let me rephrase this. Throughout our history, Americans of many faiths have long turned to prayer for guidance, peace, and hope. President Biden proclaimed that Thursday would be the National Day of Prayer and asked citizens of the United States to give thanks for freedoms and blessings and ask for God's continued guidance, mercy, and protection. I'll quote from Governor Cox's declaration today. He said, "A National Day of Prayer has been part of America's heritage since it was declared by the First Continental Congress in 1775, and the United States Congress approved a joint resolution in 1952, setting aside a day each year for prayer. He declared that Thursday, May 5th, 2021 is the observance of the National Day of Prayer, and we will continue that tradition. Leaders and citizens of our nation are afforded the privilege of prayer, affirming our spiritual heritage and the principles upon which our nation is founded." Russell M. Nelson said, "I invite you to consider how your thoughts and prayers can be a catalyst for God to inspire and direct you towards acts of kindness, compassion, and generosity. Imagine how much good you could do in the world and in your own family, school, and workplace as we seek to be His healing and helping hands. We surely will exalt the Lord in this way. As this is a day we unite as a nation and community to exercise our religious freedoms, I encourage all to remember to give thanks for the right to worship as we choose, and that our prayers will reflect our gratitude for this freedom." I'll now turn the time over to Councilmember John Adams for a prayer, and he will also lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our Father, who art in heaven, we come before Thee at this time on the National Day of Prayer to give our thanks for this country that we live in, for this city that we're able to be a part of, and for our families. We're so grateful that we have a free country that we live in. We're so grateful for the men and women who make sacrifices daily so that we can enjoy those freedoms. We're especially grateful at this time for the men and women who serve our city as a part of the fire department that sacrifice their lives for us and for our safety. We're grateful for their families and grateful for the sacrifices they make as well, and ask Thee to bless them and help them to be safe and kept out of harm's way. We ask Thee to bless that we can have as much water as possible. And we pray that all of those who have family members or friends, or loved ones who are serving outside of the United States or inside the United States, that they will be watched over and protected. We say this in the name of Thy beloved Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. If you'll stand with me in Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Adams. Okay, we now will, do we have anyone signed up for call to the public? Okay, we don't have anyone signed up. Thank you, Anne-Marie. All right, then we will move forward to the presentation and awards. We have a badge pinning ceremony by Chief Paul Erickson.
Mayor, Council, City leaders, members of the audience, I appreciate your time today. This is a great day for all of us. I'm very proud of our firefighters that we have. It's an honor to serve them. It's an honor to be with them. We are very fortunate, not to take anybody out of any order, but we were very fortunate to make a hire in November for 5 firefighters that are brand new, and they stayed. They stayed and knew they weren't starting until May. That says a lot about an individual. It says a lot about their character and their dedication to an organization to hang on when jobs are tight out there. So I really appreciate them. I'm going to, yes, sir.
Just move the mic over so
absolutely
the folks in the back might not be able to hear as well.
Thank you. Everybody hear me? I usually don't have that problem.
I'm with you.
So I'm just going to call them up, ma'am, if you're good with that. I'm just going to call them up, line up, and we'll do one swearing in for them, and then they'll come individual with their families and just do the pinning on one at a time, if that's okay. Casey Adams. Casey Adams came to us part-time in August 2010. Casey's really going to not like me for this. Then full-time for us in 2017 as an engineer. Part-time again in June of 18 because he left again. And then he's back in May of 2022. So you got to love him. I love him, so I appreciate it. Shannon Burchell Nelson. Shanny came to us in June of 2018 with no experience at all, and has been great. It's been great to watch her grow. Very proud of her. Just got graduated from paramedic school a few weeks ago, and then just found out yesterday that she's a paramedic. So very happy for that. Spencer Brothers came to us in December of 2020. We're a little bit behind on this because Spencer really didn't want to do it, but now he is. So he's been a great pickup. Already was a paramedic, so it's been great to have him. Tyler Reese. Chief Ward gave me a lot of grief for Tyler Reese because he came to us from Layton. But I reminded Chief Ward that you actually took him from me first because I was chief at Hill and he left Hill and went to Layton. So all I did was return the favor. So Tyler came to us in December of 2021 full-time. And it's great to have him back. Colton Alvey. This is a pretty good success story. Worked at Davis County Sheriff's Office, paramedic for him, had no fire certs. So we got him his fire certs. Dave Olson led that team who works for us, led that team to get him this fire certs. And then he just stayed loyal to us and started full-time this month. So it's been great. Andrew Leonard. Andrew came to us same time. These next ones, to include Colton, they tested for us in November, and these are the ones that signed, not a letter of obligation, just a job offer, and accepted it. So Andrew's been a great kid. His father, I got to know his father, who is Dr. Leonard, and yeah, I've enjoyed the relationship, so it's really good. Cameron Bledsoe. Cameron, again, same time as these. Cameron stuck with us. Now, keep in mind, since November, they've been working for us part-time. And as I told our folks, if they think that they're on a job interview to make sure they're worthy to work for us, we are on a job interview to make sure that we create that environment that they want to come and work for us. So and obviously we stuck to that, so I appreciate it. Mitch Probert. Mitch, same line. Just what a great asset to have. Mitch is a little bit older, so he brings a little maturity that probably I don't have. So it is very good to have him. And last but not least, most definitely, Dallin Peck. Dallin Peck, same thing. He started this month with us full-time, but has worked with us part-time. Not too much part-time the last little bit because he's worried about getting married. So but that's all right, young man. But I really am proud of all of you. I know you know that, and I do appreciate it. So, ready for your oath.
Yeah, thank you.
Please raise your right hand. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of this state, and the laws and ordinance of Kaysville City, and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity. Very good. Thank you very much, and welcome aboard. And I was hoping that would mess you up, so that's good. Good job. So if everybody could just do it.
Yeah, let's go down there, yeah. Should we go down there?
Yeah, Mike's a big hugger. Give Mike a hug. All the family can come.
Miss Cameron. I need to give you the birthday card that you forgot to come and pick up. I'm also going to give you a limited edition patch from 2002 Olympics that we had done in Rome. Now, I realize this will have to go under your Kaysville patch, but that's okay. 2002 is also the year I retired. So. I also talked about how the Navy SEALs did this, but camera declined, so.
Right through the skin.
We used to do that when you go through this, when you put the palms in.
Oh, you did? Yeah.
It's just like the one I leave. For the family, thank you very much. Thank you. It means a lot to them, it means a lot to me, and thank you. And thank you for trusting me to lead them in the right direction. So I sure appreciate it. Thank you. No, we're not going to stay. We'll go back to work. All right.
Thanks for being here, families. That was really fun. Okay, now we'll have a presentation of the... should I wait for a minute?
Oh, I don't know.
Do we have any Youth City Council members here?
We've got them back here. I think they're just going to accept it for them.
Are they? Okay. If you guys want to come to the front, that would be great.
Coming to the front, we have our new mayor and mayor pro tem of the Youth City Council. Why don't you guys step up to the mic and introduce yourselves to the council?
I'm Holly Francis. I'm the new mayor of the Youth City Council.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
I'm Ben Anderson, and I'm second in command now.
You're second man. Good, good. Congratulations.
So,
Councilmember Adams is going to present the awards.
back on my mission days, we used to say when people were getting to the end of their mission, we used to call them trunky, which meant that they were they've packed their trunks and are ready to go. And that's kind of how I feel our seniors are here with the Youth City Council, because none of them showed up. They just, they get trunky, they're ready to go. They've already got accepted to colleges, and they think that, but But I think we need to at least, so it's on the records, can you please type really fast, Emery, that we acknowledge especially our one and only Kate Scott. She was in U City Council for 3 years.
3 years.
She was mayor for 2 of those years. We have a plaque for her here. Eliza Strebeck, also 3 years, 2019 to 2022. Ashley Alvord for 3 years. Kate Bowers for 3 years. And then we had a couple of 1 year, Hannah Cutright, Eliza Thaxton, Ryan Murphy, and Jacob Murphy. So if we give a round of applause, and we'll make sure they get these plaques.
Thank you.
And your first duty as mayor and mayor pro tem, stand those up. Thanks,
Thank
you guys.
Thank you for being here. Thank you, Councilmember Adams.
See how slick that was?
Way to go, Mayor. Delegating is great. Okay, our next presentation is a UAMPS presentation by Mason Baker. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us here this evening. I'm going to actually, if it's all right with the council, I'm going to have Jackie Coombs, who's our manager of member relations, speak to a little bit more on the benefits of public power, sort of from the UAMPS perspective. So turn some time to her first.
Yeah, welcome, Jackie. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. You can go to the next page. Well, first of all, it's great. I mean, look at all of that. You know, blue, great to live in this country, and great to live in a public power city. It really is. And public power is managed by you, the elected officials, who are accountable to the citizens. So it's a very important job. And you can establish your rates, you can invest, you know, your improvements, you can offer energy efficiency programs, as you discussed. You hire great staff, and you're responsible for quickly outages. The community controls the public funds, so that can go back into the community as you feel fit, and it doesn't go to out of town investors like, you know, if you were on a Rocky Mountain Power system. Electricity rates in general are lower. Reliability in general is much higher in our public power communities. Utilities, operations, and finances are always discussed in open meetings, which is a huge benefit for the communities. So, and you have great utility crews. You know, they are your friends, they're the neighbors, they're familiar with your system. I heard Brian explain every street that you had troubles on. You know, great assets to your community, and that is does, you know, fast time and work reliable. You know, your revenue helps financing other essential services, and then that helps you keep your taxes low in your cities. So public power contributes to economic development and local jobs. By providing lower rates, you can get, you know, development here locally in the city, and especially mutual aid. You know, you've seen trucks come into your city to help you in wind events. You know, today we've been pushing our mobile generator that the UAMPS owns down to New Mexico because they have fire. They can't support their water system, so we're sending our generator down there. You know, great mutual aid that we can assist each other, and we do have a huge platform to do that. So, you know, lots of benefits in being in public power.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thanks, Jackie. Great. Well, thanks again for the time. Again, my name is Mason Baker. I'm the general counsel for UAMPS. Been there for 11 years. Graduated actually with Nick from the University of Utah Law School. Go Utes. So what I'm going to go through here this evening, and we can be, please ask questions as we go through. We can be pretty informal, and I can answer questions about what we're doing with the carbon-free power project and try to provide as much context into how this fits in with the industry trends that we're seeing. You know, we heard Councilmember Oaks speak about renewables earlier in the working session, so we certainly go down and talk about renewables, which we're actively involved in pursuing. So next, are you steering, Nick? Okay, thanks. All right, so what we're doing with the carbon-free power project, we are looking at deploying from a new technology provider, that's coming out of Oregon State University. That's where the technology originally was developed out of the nuclear engineering department there. And this company started back in 2007, and back in 2013 was awarded a Department of Energy funding award. It's a 50-50 cost share where they were putting up 50%, the Department of Energy, the other 50%. They used that money in order to get their design licensed by the NRC. So they've gone through that licensing process, and now they're really looking at commercially deploying their technology. UAMPS will be their first customer deploying this technology. We've spent a significant amount of time. We started looking at this technology back in 2012. And since then, we've steadily progressed the project, moving it forward. You can see here up on the slide, this is sort of a cutaway of what the reactor building looks like. And the interesting thing about the technology, and I won't go into a lot of detail about the technology, we can, if you are more interested, we can certainly follow up. NuScale's got a great website with a lot of videos on it that explain the technology much better than I can. But what you can see in the cutaway here is we're looking at deploying 6 of the NuScale power reactors, and they're situated in this reactor bay, and it's a very safe design. They've been incredibly deliberate in their safety case for the technology. It is designed to deal with any sort of loss of outside power or any sort of Fukushima type event that may arise. And that was a big consideration coming out of Fukushima for new technology, was to account for some of those issues that arose there and make sure that the new wave of technology didn't have those issues. So this technology does account for that. And that was, first and foremost, safety as utilities is our #1 priority. And we wanted to look at a technology that had all those safety attributes. And then importantly, from a pricing standpoint, we've been very deliberate in understanding what the pricing will look like for the project. And I'll get into that in more detail. We're looking...
Real quick,
Sure.
ask you, is this the same, just so I'm on the same page, is this the same project that we opted out of, like last year in whatever phase? Like, okay.
Yes.
I just want to make sure. No, I know we didn't necessarily just opt out. Maybe you can explain. We have 3 new council members, or is that maybe something you don't want him to explain?
Explain what?
Just like
Our
sort of
decision?
where we're, because you're explaining what UAMPS is doing.
Maybe-
UAMPS is still going forward with it even though the city's opted out. Is that what you're saying?
Well, and maybe Shane can explain it after.
Well, just in a
Explain it
nutshell,
after,
we were in the project and then we opted out of the project. I think we're just at this point concerned about escalating costs, and there's probably a feeling of taking a wait and see approach to this. So I think part of having Mason and Jackie come today was how has that gone? In the
What's
last
the
year?
project? Where's the project at?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure
Where
it's the
are we on
same
that?
thing.
Sure. No, I mean,
Not
that's-
Voyager 5 that we opted out
Voyager
of.
5.
It was, it did not have that brand name when you opted out. That was some new marketing they've done recently.
That's big time.
It is, yeah. I should also mention that.
Voyager 6.
Yeah, Voyager 6. There's a Voyager 6, 8, and 12. I should mention that they did go public earlier this week. NuScale did. So they are now a publicly traded company, which is great for them.
Probably not the best week to go public.
Well, yeah, probably not in the scheme of things, but so far it's been good for them. So, sort of big picture, will be sited at the Idaho National Laboratory. We did a very intensive siting study looking at various locations, looked really kind of in the Intermountain West, and then honed in on the Idaho National Lab and entered into a long-term lease agreement for effectively 100 years with the Department of Energy to site the project there. So that allows us to develop, which we're doing now, and I'll provide a little more detail on that, construct, operate, and ultimately decommission after operations is concluded. So again, 6 modules total of 462 megawatts electric. Each module is 77 megawatts electric. The first module is scheduled to come online in 2029, and the 6th module in 2030. Next slide. So as far as how we're structuring the project, I think this is really important. I am a lawyer. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through contracts, but it really speaks to how measured we're going to be as we develop this project. We fully recognize that it's a first-of-a-kind nuclear project, and we need to have the right type of controls as we go through the project. So I'm just going to walk through those really from a commercial perspective as opposed to a legal T's and C's sort of look. So first up here, we have this development cost reimbursement agreement. This is an agreement we negotiated, executed with NuScale. And what this agreement provides for is for us to, throughout the development phase of the project, which is really now up until the final decision to go into construction, which is in 2026, we're going to constantly be checking in based on engineering cost estimates, how we're doing against our price target of $58. And if we exceed that price target, then the UAMPS members have the ability to terminate further development and get reimbursement back from NuScale. The reimbursement we get from NuScale, it does decline the longer we stay in the project. Sort of goes with the philosophy that is the longer we're in and it's looking good, we're de-risking the project. But having that is incredibly important for us to understand where we're coming in on schedule and on budget. The way that we get the project cost estimates is through the second agreement, the Engineering, Procurement, and Construction Development Agreement. This is with Fluor. Fluor is the engineering company that would be constructing the project. So they are the ones that are doing these site-specific engineering estimates. We have 2 owners engineers that are on the project working for us, looking at, in particular, these site-specific cost estimates as they come in. We'll get to it in a slide or two, but we have, we're currently at a Class 4 engineering cost estimate. We'll get a Class 3 later this year, October of this year. So there's a lot of focus now on getting that Class 3 site-specific cost estimate in and seeing how it's stacking against that $58 number. We're certainly aware. You know, Brian spoke to all the pressures he's seeing. We're seeing the same sort of pressures like everyone is on escalation. The third up here is the Department of Energy award. What this award provides for throughout the term of the award is in place through the commercial operation date. DOE would cover 25% of the total project cost, but most importantly, between now and getting to that decision to construct, DOE will be picking up approximately 80% of the cost. That was a very intentional architecture we negotiated with DOE because we wanted to go through the process of de-risking the project to get a site-specific cost estimate that was really well advanced and also to go through the NRC licensing process. So that's why we have that front-loaded in that way. It does help us achieve the price target because they're picking up 25% of the cost and we don't have to repay those costs. It also helps us with capitalized interest during construction because it's just less principal that we're carrying through the construction. We're not, during the development construction period, we're not billing the participants, we are capitalizing the interest, and that capitalization of the interest does go into our pricing for the project. Fourth agreement up here is the power sales contracts. These are the agreements that we sign with the members. They serve as our financing collateral. And importantly, the way that they're structured, it does match up with all the milestones that we have during the development period. So as we go through the process, the UAMPS members through this agreement are going to have those same check-in points to make sure the project's coming on schedule and on budget. The site use permit, I already mentioned it. It's really just the agreement with the DOE that will allow us to be up there at the site for roughly 100 years. Thanks, Nick. So on NRC licensing, NuScale has to have their design certified by the NRC. They got their design certified by the NRC for a module that was 60 megawatts electric. They're currently going through the process to get the NRC to approve the uprate of that module to 77 megawatts electric. So they're doing that on their side of the NRC licensing. On our side of NRC licensing, we have to submit to the NRC a combined operating license application, and that is a key focus area for us right now. We've been working on putting together that application. We've been engaging with the NRC. We have a public meeting on May 15th, working towards submittal of that license application in early 2024. Speak to fuel here. We would use standard nuclear fuel consistent with the domestic operating fleet that's currently out there. You can purchase it domestically. I raise that because some of the advanced reactors that are currently being developed are looking at utilizing a different type of fuel that's got a higher enrichment to it, and currently it is sourced out of Russia, and you can all appreciate that there's a grave sensitivity towards that currently. That's something you may see within the industry is a discussion about trying to have that fuel developed domestically here.
So I have a question on the lease.
Sure.
So I'm just curious why UAMPS would opt to do a lease rather than a buy their own property, because like anything else, 100 years isn't that far off. We know that by owning our own power company.
Yep.
So in 100 years from now, what happens when the lease is up and you've invested all this money into it?
Yeah, there is the potential for renewals that are covered in the lease. So we could renew. You bring up an excellent point on why not just buy it, which is certainly something that we could do. In order for the government to do that, they would have to go through, at the very least, the NEPA process. So we have thought about that and thought about when it would be the best timing to do that. But that is something that I'd say is under consideration.
Do you think anybody would really want to buy that afterwards, though?
No, I'm more concerned that they're going to put all this money and investment into this place, and their lease is going to run up in 100 years. And if they don't, I mean, just simple contracts like us trying to lease a hangar up at the airport, we find things change a lot more than you think they do. And it seems like owning the property in the area that you put your stuff on would make more sense to me.
I'm in concurrence with you. I mean, we're certainly exploring that option.
Okay.
So third up here is water needs for the project. We spent a tremendous amount of time when we started the process looking at what the water usage would be for the project. And the traditional way of cooling these nuclear projects, like a coal plant, they tend to be very water intensive. And we started the analysis thinking that we were going to use the traditional, what we refer to as wet cooling. But we wanted to do a rigorous analysis looking at various options that would be less water intensive. We ultimately concluded after several different engineering companies looked at it along with Fluor and NuScale that we could use air-cooled condensers. And I don't know if you've ever driven down by Mona and seen the natural gas plant there. They use air-cooled condensers. And it's much less water intensive. To give you sort of a perspective on the water intensity, of wet cooling, we were looking at 21,000 acre feet, and doing dry cooling brings it down between 3,000 and 4,000 acre feet. And so when we put our capital cost assumptions for air-cooled condensers, because it is more costly upfront capital for sure to do it. But we wanted to look on also over the life of the project. We're looking at a 40-year life of the project, what the operation and maintenance costs would also look like. And when we did that, we were sort of seeing it as being kind of a push. And it ultimately, from the UAMPS member perspective, it's kind of a no-brainer given the water sensitivities to go with the air-cooled condensers. Because the practical reality of buying water rights for us up there would mean that we would likely be talking to farmers about buying their water rights and drying up their farms, and that, of course, is
Right.
A very sensitive thing. So I think this is a really exciting thing about this project. I know the industry's real excited about it, DOE's real excited about it, the members are real excited, because when we think about any energy development, we're getting more and more focused as to what the environmental footprint looks like for any project. So that's a huge benefit. State and local permitting, we have been engaging for years with the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality, also been working with county officials up there. So we've got good engagement with them. The Idaho legislature did pass 2 laws in favor of the project dealing with property tax abatement. That was several years ago. And I'll just say it quickly. All the fuel for the project would be stored on site. I just want to get that out there because typically there's always a question about fuel and long-term storage. In the current arrangement under federal law is that in order for us to get our NRC license, we have to enter into an agreement with the Department of Energy, who says that they will take that fuel once it goes out of the reactors and goes into dry cask storage. To date, the existing facilities, the Department of Energy has not met their obligation to take that. So there is a lot of dry cask storage at existing reactor facilities. And the ultimate repository under federal law is supposed to be Yucca Mountain. That's obviously a political sensitivity, but that's what the law of the land says currently. And this administration is working towards interim fuel storage, so it would take fuel to an interim storage facility prior to a permanent repository. So that is something that this administration is trying to advance the ball on. As far as operations, we've been spending a lot of time working on the operations, because you think about nuclear plants are very capital intensive. We'll basically spend 60% of the costs that make up our levelized costs of electricity over a 40-year life. 60% of those costs will be incurred prior to commercial operation date. The remaining 40% will happen in the 40 years of operation. So we have entered into a term sheet with Xcel Energy. They're based out of Minneapolis. They reach all the way down into Colorado and Texas. They currently operate nuclear reactors. They have a very high performance rating for the reactors that they currently operate to be our operator for the facility. We've been onboarding them really for the last 6 months or so. These reactors, we'll refuel them every 18 to 24 months. Something that's really unique about this design, since they are modular, you have each of those modules producing 77 megawatts electric. You take one of them offline at a time to do the refueling, and then the other 5 are continuing to operate. And from a utility perspective, that's a huge advantage to be able to keep generating electricity that way. I mean, typically we just take a whole plant down. The last couple of weeks we had our Nebo gas plant out for several weeks, and whenever you go into outage, something always, you discover a few things. So that outage went a week or 2 longer than expected. Another aspect about the design is load following. This is something that the reactors can do. And it's attractive, from the perspective of renewable penetration. As we see more renewables come online, there is the desire to be able, as they drop offline, whether it's the wind stops blowing or the sun goes down, to have generation there to meet that quickly. So these reactors can do that. We would anticipate, really, it's most cost effective just to run them flat out as opposed to load following. But there may be market compensation for that, especially since this is a zero carbon emitting resource. Currently, the mode of load following right now is with natural gas, typically, and that is CO2 emitting. It's about half the emissions of a coal plant, generally speaking. So under our NRC license, first 40-year license term and then 2 20-year renewals. That's sort of how we got to the 80 years of operation for the site use permit. transmission, I will go very quickly on this one. I will just, because there's a lot of detail here, and for any new resource, whether it's wind, solar, whatever, a big issue for us in the West is, given the existing transmission, how we're going to interconnect. And we interconnect with Pacific Corp's system, Rocky Mountain Power's parent. We're well advanced in this process. So it's a good thing for this project, and frankly, it's a big impediment for a lot of the renewable generation to come online, and it's going to be something that we're dealing with in the coming years a lot for any new solar or wind. And I'll maybe keep going.
Councilmember Oaks, did you have a question?
Difficult for some of these new renewables coming online to be able to tie in with the current infrastructure? Why is that?
Yeah. And thanks for the question. I should have elaborated further on that. So,
I was a finance major, so speak slow.
So the existing transmission in the West is pretty lean, and what I mean by that is it maybe has not been kept up, or they haven't done system improvements like they perhaps could have, and because of that, when a new resource comes online, they need to study how it's going to impact the system. And really what we're seeing is any new resource that's coming onto the system, it likely has what they refer to as upgrade cost. So the developer is going to have to pay those upgrade costs. And they typically are, more like 8-figure sums. And that is a big lift for a project, because it all of a sudden puts a lot of economics in jeopardy. And you could imagine in this inflationary environment, that is extremely problematic, especially, I don't want to get us sidetracked, but there's a lot of pressures in the solar industry right now that we're all trying to work through. So that's just making things very, very challenging. So kind of go through the cost. Again here, we're in the development period. We've got the benefit of the Department of Energy award. We have the development cost reimbursement agreement with NuScale. We'll go through the process of refining the site-specific cost estimates, checking it against that price target. Prior to going into construction, we'll have one last cost estimate. And what's up here is a Class 1 cost estimate. And let me provide a little definition there on that. So for some of the reactor projects that were being constructed in the southeastern United States that went way over budget and way off schedule, they went into the field starting to construct when they had design engineering complete around somewhere in the teens, some also due to litigation at this point, maybe 20%. Our plan is to have around 90% of the design engineering fully complete, and then there is some sort of in the field design engineering that happens. But we want to have that level of cost certainty before the member communities are looking at that decision to fully go into construction. Then we go into operations, again, 40 years. And a nice thing about nuclear plants is they tend to be pretty cost stable from an operations standpoint. If you compare it to a natural gas combined cycle plant, you're always exposed to natural gas price volatility. It's definitely not a good time to be comparing to natural gas because it is incredibly high. Over the course of developing this project, I've seen natural gas at $1 a million BTU. Today it's greater than $8 a million BTU, and that really puts a lot of pressure on your economics at a gas plant. Another aspect of this development is decommissioning the project. We will be collecting for decommissioning over the life of the project. So we'll have really a sense of what it's going to take to develop, construct, operate, and ultimately decommission the project. So it's a full cradle-to-grave look. That is required by NRC regulation, but as we look at decommissioning coal plants in the west, which we're involved in. This is a huge benefit to have this sorted out now as opposed to later. So what we've been doing up at the site. Is really getting ready to submit that NRC license application. This end of last summer into the fall, what we did was we did a very intensive geotechnical investigation where we drilled 51 holes underneath the site layout, looking at seismically what was going on beneath the plant layout. Those holes were 800 to 1,500 feet in depth. They took core bore samples out of them, and they're currently being analyzed. Haven't seen any issues there. But that's a key activity. This is the first geotechnical investigation done for a small modular reactor project. It was done during COVID, no COVID issues. And I should mention, UAMPS has a project director that we've hired, and I'm speaking to his work, and he would hit me if I did not note that to date they've had a little more than 37,000 man hours on site. This was as of the end of February with no safety issues, no recordables. So we've got a good track record up there, and he's incredibly diligent on that because he wants to have that discipline as we move further down the road into actual site work. And just a quick bio on him. He was over in China building, overseeing the development of the AP1000 projects that were brought online over there, and which is a new nuclear project. And then after that, he was over in the UAE working on new Korean reactors that were brought online. We wanted to have an individual that knew about new nuclear and how to do it successful. So he is that guy. He's been great to have on. He's been with us for about 14 months. So, we've been remobilizing the site. We sort of closed up shop for the winter. We're at the western edge of the INL. If you haven't been up to the Idaho National Laboratory, it is a great tour. Also, Craters of the Moon is right adjacent to us. So we're focused on putting together the NRC license application. That's going to be a key activity over the next year. And then, as I mentioned, we have the Class 3 site-specific cost estimate we'll receive from Fluor in October, and we'll put that through our model and see how that stacks against the $58 number. Fluor's being very intentional in putting together this cost estimate. They got over 100 vendor packages out to actually vendors that we could use for the project. So where we are on participation, we put together a development company, which is the CFVP LLC. That development company holds all the project assets, and we did that intentionally to also allow for certain utilities that we're talking to would like to come into the project as undivided owners and not come through UAMPS, which is something we have experience in. We're in jointly owned projects, and it's just sort of, and it makes sense for certain utilities. I mean, these utilities that want undivided ownership are basically wanting to buy a module or more of offtake, so it's a pretty significant amount of investment for them. The other way of participation is the power sales contracts, and that's how all of the existing participants are participating. We are investigating a power purchase agreement structure, and the reality with that structure is that some utilities have expressed a desire to pay more and not have the same cost exposure as a power sales contract. So that's something that we are exploring. And then the ownership is another way to come into the project. And I'll close with this, as to the big picture timeline. We got the Class 3 engineering estimate coming at the end of this year, looking at submitting the NRC license application in early 2024. And prior to submitting that license application, we'll have another check-in on the site-specific cost estimate. That's what's referred to as the Class 2 PCE. Sorry about all the acronyms. And then NRC approval in the summer of 2026, and we'd be looking at a decision of the members to go into construction that summer. We'll have another Class 1 site-specific cost estimate before that decision, and then the first module online in 29, and then the last in 2030. So that, I think that is all I had on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are we asking questions? Or?
Sure, if you have some.
So my understanding is that when we left the project, it was primarily because we were looking at the fact it was set up so that those who remained in the project at that time, if more people left, you would bear the responsibility of the whole. You didn't just keep your percentage of what you signed up for. Let me rephrase that. So I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, it was set up originally with a lot of people joined in. So say there was 20 people that were joined in, and they were sharing, you know, that percentage. What would that 5% of the cost? Mm-hmm. I think I remember that the reason we exited was because the more people that exited increased the percentage of what we would bear. We wouldn't just keep our same 5%, right? Is that correct?
Yep.
Has anything changed since that? Like, and are we being proposed an option of on-ramping? I mean, because we off-ramped, right? We went off. Like, are you coming to us telling us that there's a window for us to get back on? And what's different about?
Have the risks changed? I guess, right?
Or what's different than when we left? Aside from the fact that I think one of the things you pointed out that was interesting was the idea that the company, as the time goes on, if they goof up, for lack of a better word, that they're paying you back, and that decreases over time.
Sure. Yeah, I can, and I can't remember exactly when Kaysville exited, but I can just speak to some of the questions there. So you're correct in that you know, the participants that are in it do bear 100% of the cost, and that's just the reality of how UAMPS is structured, right? And you know, I believe that Kaysville left sort of in the fall of 2020, right as the DOE award was getting finalized.
Sounds right.
So having the DOE award finalized is obviously a huge benefit when we think about DOE's picking up 80% of the project cost. They're
picking up 80%. I thought it was 25.
Yeah, and let me clarify that. So over the duration of the award, the DOE award is in place now and will stay in place until all 6 modules come operational. So over that time span, the total project cost, they're picking up 25% of the total project cost.
Okay.
Between now and the decision to go into construction in 2026, they're picking up more like 80% of the project cost.
Got it.
And that was very intentional from a de-risking standpoint, so we can get the cost certainty associated with getting a Class 1 project cost estimate and also having the NRC license in hand.
And you're saying like the idea of having 90% of the engineering done eliminates your risk of change orders versus what some of these other ones that fell through were like 15%?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and that's, you know, there are successful new nuclear stories. Unfortunately, they have not been in the U.S. And so we have those to look at, and that architecture of getting that level of cost certainty through design engineering is something, you know, that they've held to. So, you know, there's the benefit of the DOE award, and then there's also the benefit of the Development Cost Reimbursement Agreement. It's a terrible acronym. But with NuScale, and under that, we have 100% reimbursement through the period of time of submitting that NRC license application. So I think, you know, from a commercial standpoint, that's a huge benefit to be able to go through and see how the cost estimate's coming together. And I would say that the members have the option to terminate, because the reality is, you know, we could exceed the price target, and the members look at what the alternatives look like, and they may decide that, you know, if it's a small increase, then maybe they want to stay in. I mean, it's a changing market for us. We were in a very soft electric market for a number of years, and that is not at all the situation we find ourselves in now. I mean, this summer, market pricing in August, which is definitely the worst month, is looking at over $200 a megawatt hour. So and what's really happening there is we have a lot of capacity that's coming offline, and we also have a combination of capacity coming offline. We have solar projects that are not coming online as scheduled, and it's sort of just a perfect mix. You know, hydro is not looking good for this summer. I'm sure you all have seen what's going on with the Colorado River, and there just has not been a lot of new resources planned, frankly.
So my last question, or if you could answer, as far as onboarding, what's the proposal to us?
Well, and really, I don't know if you were prepared to talk about that today, but really, I guess our next order of business would be that we would, if it's something we want to look into even more, we'd have the Power Commission review it and then make a recommendation. Is that?
Yeah.
We
just asked for kind of a general overview of what's going on right now.
Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off, but we were just asking for some general information. So thank you very much.
Sure.
Appreciate your presentation.
Thank you. Appreciate the question.
Yeah, thank you. All right, do we have any conflicts of interest to declare? No? Okay, all right, then we're going to turn over to Dean and Levi, or turn it over to Dean and Levi for our budget discussion. Take it away.
Thanks so much for coming, you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There we go, okay. We want to remind the council that there will be no action tonight on the budget. This is just one of the steps that we take as we prepare for the adoption of the tentative budget, and that will be on May 19th, so a couple of weeks. Prior to the adoption of the tentative budget, we will prepare a complete budget document for the council to review. I know it's kind of difficult at this point where we're popping up spreadsheet. You're not really seeing what we're looking at, but that will be made available as part of the tentative budget in the next couple of weeks.
And just to interject, the tentative budget then has several other steps before we actually adopt a final budget. So we'll continue to have discussions, just so everyone.
Yeah, and that really becomes the starting place. That's when it becomes available for the general public to review and ask questions of the council. So I think our intent tonight is to kind of pick up where we left off after our budget retreat, and kind of maybe talk about some of the things that we've looked at and maybe some changes that can be made, and kind of move forward from here. Okay. I think okay. We just want to identify probably the biggest struggle as part of putting this budget together is the cost of doing business, and inflation cost. You know, we've never seen anything like this. You know, the U.S. is about 8.5%. The mountain average is 10.4%. And then even with that, we've asked departments to hold their operations budget pretty flat, which I think, as we discussed, they've done that pretty well. So obviously, this is one of the challenges that we're dealing with, and related to that is the cost of wages and what's happening there. This is a report produced by the David Eccles School of Business on declining real wages, and you can see it's one of the largest real wage drops in recent history, if not the largest. And Levi went to some training on this. I don't know if you want to add anything to this, Levi, or?
No, so this PowerPoint was put together at the conference I just went to. It's really interesting. It was by the Kempsey Gardner Institute at the University of Utah. Most of the presentation, Utah is doing really well just economically in a lot of areas, but they did point out that inflation is hitting Utah and this area particularly harder than the rest of the country, a little bit more. So, yeah.
Why is that? It just is. They don't know yet. Okay.
I mean, is it housing? Was that figured in it?
Because of our cheap nature.
That's why they were all lined up to go to taco time tonight to get a free taco.
That's why I ate at home.
So tonight, we don't want to go into a lot of detail. We want to maybe circle back to where we left off. And I think where we left off as part of the budget retreat is how to address the gap that we were seeing, how to best handle that. And if you recall, we were talking about a $2 million gap in the general fund, and how to shrink that gap. And we talked about the bulk of it is personnel costs, because the bulk of the city costs are personnel costs. But since the budget retreat, I hope you can read this. We've gone back and tried to identify things that maybe we can shift to another fund or reconsider the revenue projections, the expenditure projections, and with that we have put together a list of items that we think we can from the beginning take care of, handle. So I'll just kind of go through that list. We, after the council's good work with our neighboring city on Fruit Heights fire protection, we think they're committed to stay with Kaysville. We hope they are. And with excuse me, and with that, we expect them to pay their proportionate share. So that's a $175,000 increase from where we originally had the budget. We have $170,000 we have moved from parks capital projects from the general fund to the capital projects fund, and fund those with with park impact fees. We have removed one of the personnel requests. The recreation, moving a position to a full-time clerk, so there's some savings there. We've increased the sales tax estimate based on the most recent data, and the data we received just a couple days ago surprised us a little bit. It's maybe a little higher than we anticipated, and we hope that's the case, and we hope we can make another adjustment in the next 30 days as we start seeing that report come to us. We've adjusted the medical insurance premium that we built in to the medical cost to pick up some of that increase. So we've backed that away because there's no increase in medical insurance. And then this is one of the items where I think Councilmember Blackham was particularly interested in, is there a way to look at enterprise funds and make sure they're paying their full share for governmental services, and there needs to be fact-based allocation, how we do that. And so what we've done is we've gone back and said what governmental services are being provided to the enterprise funds, and how can we allocate those costs back to the general fund. So we think there is about $200,000 there, and that'll show up in the administrative charges. Of course, related with that is it's kind of a take from Peter to pay Paul, and you hope Peter has money when you take it from him. And then there are a couple of increases. We bumped up the dispatch fees after getting some additional data, and then excuse me. There's an adjustment for the new dispatch, excuse me, dispatch project that will come on probably first quarter next year. So that's half of the annual cost that we'll experience in this budget year. So with that and leaving the items we talked about in personnel alone, the 4.75% market adjustment, leaving the potential merit as part of the budget, we're about $1,050,000 as part of the gap.
Better than two.
And we propose as part of the tentative budget, of course, we can make all kinds of changes still, but we propose as part of the tentative budget that you adopt on May 19th, that gap is filled with a potential tax increase. And that'd be $1,050,000, and the percentage increase would be 25%, but the dollar increase on an average value home in Kaysville would be about $10.23.
And that's based on a higher market average, right? And because that increase. So it's based on 543,000 is the median.
That's $10.23 a month, right?
Yeah,
a month,
that's
not,
a month.
not
So
total,
120 a year. Yeah.
which is based on a valuation of how much?
543.
So, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is this time for questions? Are you done? You want questions?
Sorry.
Are you ready for questions, or are you
Sure.
fine?
We've got some other things to talk about with enterprise funds, but sure.
Okay, this is the question I have, and I don't know how to, because I obviously didn't word it very well in our budget discussion, but I'll use the 2019, because that's the only one I could find, all right? In 2019, we were dinged when they did our audit. The auditor dinged us because we had 33% of unassigned funds of our total revenue for our general fund, okay? And so we actually had $4.6 million over what our budget costed. So that was money that we had. There was 33%. The auditor dinged us because he said you should have between 5 and 25% over. 33 is too much. We realized that. We took some of that money and we put it towards this building in the remodel. But what I'm asking is, obviously, we didn't take and use all that money. Is there, to your best guess, there should be some unassigned fund balance out of the general fund this year also. Can we use our unassigned general fund based on estimates and not have to raise taxes?
That's a council decision, obviously. You can use fund balance. Our current general fund balance is about $5.5 million as of June 30th, 21. Now, our current budget, fiscal year 22, we have already programmed in to use part of that fund balance, and I think it was about 1.2.
Should still leave us
Which
about,
would bring it down
and
to
I know the
4.
state upped that 25% to a higher percent, the legislature did, but the fact of the matter is you still have the money, just because they upped the percent, we
Sure.
still have the money.
Sure.
And then the other question I have, so in that's in the general fund. So I assume that also in the power fund, which we pay our power department employees out of, and the storm drain fund, we pay our storm drain people, or our water fund. I would assume that at the end of the year, there's also unassigned fund balance there.
Yeah.
That we would be able to take possibly 1% out of those unassigned fund balances, general fund, power, stormwater, and not have to do a tax increase.
That is an option, obviously. The question is how long can you do that? I mean,
5 years.
At some point.
5 years.
Well,
I think one of the concerns this year, I was watching a report that says with inflation this year, it's almost a few $1,000 increase for the average home across the nation. And so to give another $620 increase on average in Kaysville just ups that percentage. And so and who knows how, I mean, we're going to be in a recession. I mean, I think it's just going to happen. And how do you get out of it, and not kill ourselves by doing it. But it's almost like, what do you do to this year?
Well, and the point I'm kind of getting at is, Perry, is, you know, the auditor says you should be between 5 and 25%. You can be up to a higher now, but 33% we were way over. We actually had to spend money.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not saying we have to have 25%, and I'm not saying let's not get down to 5%, but if it means we can use some of our unassigned fund balances out of all of our accounts,
I agree with you.
then, and not raise taxes, then let's show how we're tightening our belt and being responsible, just like we all are, because today, they said on the news today, the common household in Utah is probably anywhere between $300 and $500 more per month that they're having to spend. And I know you guys say $10 isn't that much, but it is. It adds up. Everybody's doing something. Everything's costing more money.
I have a question. So, Dean, okay, because I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
I do. I understand what you're saying. Obviously, the costs are rising. But if we don't do this year and we kick it to next year, then next year we'll have the deficit of whatever we've spent out of, well, $1,057,000. And then next year, what does it look like? I mean, we are headed into a recession. I think we know that. I don't know that we felt the full effects of what that will be like, but we're going to definitely feel it next year. So what does that do as a future? That's my only question and concern, is that if we do delay it, then it's going to be more painful.
It is a fair question, and I think once
And
you
it
start
makes me
getting
more
down to
scared.
that 10% or 5 or 10%, then you have to say, okay, now we have to raise taxes. We're getting down to where the auditor doesn't feel comfortable with what you've got anymore.
But then
or
how do we do
whatever.
that when we're in a full-blown recession and we tell people, oh, sorry, we didn't do it for the last year, 2 years, and now we're going to do it, and
So
there's
you're
just no money
saying
left.
you'd rather pile it on them now
No, I
instead
don't
of
want to
later?
pile it on them. No, I
But-
definitely don't want to pile it on them.
And that's what I think, I don't know. I've
Mayor?
said, I'm done.
Can I clarify something? Councilman Rokes, I think you mentioned that 620. I just want to make sure you know that's the total amount of the bill. So the increase is 122 to the resident
If they have a
for a year. I just want to make sure I'm not sure if I misunderstood. I just
No,
want to make sure.
I misread. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So 122 per year is the increase. As Dean mentioned, this is absolutely to your discretion, and we do have that amount of funding. I just wanted to make 2 quick points. One, it's probably never going to be a recommendation from staff to use one-time money on ongoing expenses. That's just gets you in a scary position. But do we have it? Yes. And can we do it? Absolutely. And then the other point that I wanted to make was I believe that the seriousness of the current situation is very well known by our community, by the communities surrounding us. I would encourage you, and if it helps, we can do this too, to gather the data that is showing what people are doing to combat this concern. And I just feel like the community is poised to understand that there is the increases, not only to salaries and wages, but also to the cost of widgets and gadgets. So I just wanted to put that out there. Not that this matters to any of you, but next year is an election year for the council, and also every year is going to be a hard year to raise taxes. But just wanted to throw those.
Yeah, I guess, you know,
Councilmember
even if
Oaks.
it was a percentage, I guess, you know, if it's, you know, we're almost 1.1 million under, even if it was, say, 50% out of the general fund or out of unassigned, I think it shows that we're with you. We're willing to compromise and do something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand where you're going with that.
I think we owe it to the community with everything else going on.
I mean, these
guess-
numbers too are not fixed. I mean, the COLA, some cities I've talked to are doing 7%, which is really seems unreasonable.
Levi,
Some cities are doing 5 for merit. In addition to that, I mean,
Yeah,
and I know we're being
which I'm
conservative.
glad we're not.
Yeah, I am too, because we're being conservative. So those numbers are still flexible too.
As a
I'm
guy who
just
spent
saying.
my entire career getting 0 or 1%,
Exactly, I know
you
how
know,
you,
and
yes.
so regardless of what the inflation was.
Let me make just
Yeah.
one point on this. Initially, we had a amount for the fleet replacement program, about $286,000. That is part of this total. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is, if you wanted to use capital expenses for fund balance, they're sure a lot easier to handle than next year if you're in a bind, so to say. So, follow what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
So if we decided to use fund balance for the capital expense, the fleet replacement program, that would reduce this $1 million down to 700,000
Yeah,
or
I
so.
thought we already had that, like, that we were doing that this year, or was that just that we did that
Our
last year?
point was, if you are going to raise taxes, it's probably best to raise them so you're at a point where your operating revenues match your operating expenses.
Yeah, I remember that.
But if you were to say, let's maybe phase this and use one-time money for capital expenses, and then if we're in a deep recession next year and we have to go a year without fleet replacement, you know, we'll be in a better position rather than just going, you know, the full amount.
I would agree. I was going to say, believe me, I don't want to raise taxes either. I would definitely, though, as a resident, prefer to know that things are going to cost more so that I can make adjustments in my budget now before the sky has truly fallen. And I know where I need to cut back. And so that's why I guess I'm saying, not that we want it, none of us want to do this, but kicking it down the road to me doesn't make a lot of sense, because then it's too late and my salaries are cut and all my income's cut and inflation's so high and we're in a recession, and then it's a huge panic because now we run out of money. We've run out of our reserves. So I want to make sure we don't get to that point. That's all.
But,
Shane.
and I guess you keep talking about we don't want to run out of money, we don't want to run out of reserves, but we've been in trouble because we have too much reserves, and I understand that they raised the percentage, but we still have the money. It's not like, and I don't know, I mean, I know I can't put you on the spot or give me those numbers, but there is unassigned monies in a lot of these other accounts that are much more than just the
And maybe we should
unassigned
let Dean
general
continue his
fund.
presentation, because there are
Yeah,
some other
okay,
accounts
I'm
we could
sorry.
look at,
All right.
and it might not be as rosy as we think.
And again, this is not an all or nothing approach.
Yeah.
I mean,
for sure.
this is a beginning of the game. You know, you can go back and say, well, we could do a slight tax increase this year and use fund balance for this. So, you know, it's not a zero-sum game. It's not all or nothing, but it's just something, just a place to start.
No, I appreciate that.
So let's maybe jump to some other areas that give us some concern.
Dean, while you're jumping, I just want to mention that I am much less optimistic about the Fruit Heights being our fire partner than you are. I just want to make that clear. I do not know how that's going to go. And that's not a $175,000 hole. That's a $475,000 hole. So, or maybe it's a little more than that, but it's much more than.
We don't have an agreement in place yet.
We do not.
So we have a check.
I appreciate your optimism, and that's a good way
Has
to be.
the check
but-
bounced?
No.
No,
Oh.
that check was for the fiscal year we're in, though, and this is for next
this is
fiscal
for
year. And
next.
I think that's a different, unfortunately, conversation.
Yeah.
I guess when they paid last year, they paid 3 days after the fiscal year, and this year they're paying 30 days before the end of the fiscal year. So
So you're
things are
thinking they're
looking
trending
up.
in a good
You know,
spot. So,
things are looking up.
Hey, I hope you're right, my friend.
Gotcha.
That bottled water right there is untapped.
Okay, maybe just quickly, some other areas. This is the Water Utility Enterprise Fund. And you can see in this case, we have programmed in this budget use of, has a different name, it's contribution of retained earnings, which is the same thing as fund balance in governmental funds. So we're programming about a $1.7 million use of reserves in the water fund, which probably makes me even more nervous than the general fund side of things, particularly when the water fund has a reserve of about $2.5 million. And knowing what the water department is projecting as far as capital projects over the next several years, I think this is one item you'll have to address fairly soon, probably with a water rate increase.
And along those lines, Josh Belknap is going to present to at least the staff and probably the council a water rate change that would generate revenue, but also his effort is to curb water use and to save this precious resource that we have. So.
Another one from the 30,000-foot level is Stormwater Utility Fund. Again, we're programming the use of retained earnings in this fund. And what that means is our projected expenditures are higher than our projected revenues for the current fiscal year. And again, that's attributable to major capital projects. This one gives me concern, probably not as much as water, but still a use of retained earnings always gives me concern. And then maybe the last one is the road utility. And there's a use of retained earnings in the road utility fund as well. Other than that, we think the revenues and the expenses line up pretty well. They match. And we think we're at a pretty good spot as far as a tentative budget to hand it over to the council and let you do your thing.
Which scares you even worse.
You're going to give us the Excel spreadsheet because I'll just change the numbers.
You got it.
Thank you.
Read only. Read only.
It's a read.
Yeah. So I don't know. Anything else to add, Levi? I think that's really all we wanted to discuss tonight, just knowing that.
Dean, what do you need to know from the council tonight to be prepared for next week? Even though I know that everything can change, do you want to know if the council wants to see changes to what you presented tonight? Do you need something, other kind of direction before the 19th, which is an action item to adopt the tentative budget?
I think our intent is to put together the budget as we're looking at, and this gap on the general fund, we would fill it with a property tax increase initially.
That'd be your recommendation.
That'd be my recommendation.
So, and then I did have a question on their COLA thing, why you were offering a 15% COLA when that's way higher than anything says it is.
We're going to talk, I think that's the next one.
Oh, I think that's on this item, isn't it?
Oh, I don't remember.
Oh,
It's part of this item.
Oh, you're right, it is. It was the proposal, it was, I think, are you talking about the option? No.
It's just the
Are
COLA.
you talking about the
variant.
option though? Like,
Yeah,
you know how we had talked about like giving a scaled COLA?
That's what I didn't know. What scale are you including in the budget?
You have the 4.7% COLA for.
4.75 COLA across the board.
Okay, that's what I wanted.
All departments.
We did talk about tiered, and it ended up costing more.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Oh, tiering's not.
Okay, so
tiering's
what's
off
in the
table?
package?
Right.
What's in the packet?
Don't
Forget
look
about
at it. Okay.
All right, I didn't know what it was.
No,
Thanks. I had that same question.
That was one of the questions came up. I think Councilmember Adams saying, well, what would happen if we did a tier COLA? And Levi ran the numbers and we looked at it. We had some difficulty on how we interpret that and how do we apply it. And so our recommendation is back to this.
Yeah, if Councilmember Adams, if you want to talk about that more, that's. I think the intent was really good. As we brought it back to the staff too, not even just the financial people. I think there was a fairness concern there with some of the percentages, and then, for example, I just threw back a general idea that I think Levi put together that had a certain tier that would be less would be a certain percentage, and a certain tier that's higher. And then it's like, how many people are right at that tier where they're like just barely over it, so they're getting the lower percentage. And so there's some of those concerns, and then I think just the the percentages turned out, I think, as we talked to it as a department head level, that was the fairest way to do it. But honestly, you can do this anyway. I did check with South Weber, who proposed to do that, and their council kind of shot it down. But I don't know all the details of why that is. I just asked them, are you guys doing this, and what does that look like? And they kind of made a case why they thought it was a good idea, but then I think their council decided not to do it. But
Makes sense. No, that's fine. And I did.
that
I
was the
talked to
feedback we got.
I talked to like chief, and he's like, well, there's a lot of people who are close to retirement, and like the retired people would get something like 4%.
And the newer people would get more.
Yeah.
It was a good idea, though, and it's great to have new ideas that we can bring.
Sure.
And Mike, your idea to use enterprise funds and to mix the accounts, that's great. It's great, and I appreciate it, because look at, I mean, just off the top, it's saving money. So, you know, these plans and ideas are great.
I think
Nobody
generally
wants to-
we'd like to fill the gaps of the power fund with power funds, and we want to fill the general fund gaps with tax increases, and we want to fund the water with water. But you know, those are, it's scary when you intermingle things, but we do have these resources, and Prop 5 has done what it's done, and so there are some other decisions to be made. It made me a little nervous with, I love that Brian's up here telling us all the things he's going to do to suspend those retained earnings, and that's great. That's what those are for. But some of those are pretty expensive.
Yeah.
But they're must-pays.
They are. They are.
So, and so you have to appreciate that the funds are there and they're budgeted for,
Right.
and we're not looking at it maybe a property tax
Absolutely.
for that, or rate, you know. So.
And looking at raising some of these rates, I mean, of course, we don't want to do that either, but that does help in terms of keeping up with costs because they're so high. So the direction you need from us is just how we're feeling about that? Should we?
Unless you've got some significant changes you want to suggest at this point.
It would come back as a.
We'll put together this modified tentative, make a complete budget packet.
And then we'd have
for
a
your
discussion.
review, and we'll adopt it on May 19th.
Me personally, I would prefer to put the cars, the fleet back.
A year?
If it were me, to put it back the way we had it, where it was coming out of the.
We can make that change if
And then
council would like us to.
and that brings us down to like 800 or 780 or something like that. And then, I mean, I personally, I've been kind of feeling like we need to set, or there might be a good idea to set a precedent that we do truth and taxation every other year. I would be okay doing it this year if we were looking at it like we were going to take some of that savings and use some of it to bring it down so it's maybe 400, 300.
Well,
like Mike said.
I would really like to have some real numbers. I want to know what the unassigned fund balance is, and if we use it, what we got left. I want to know that.
Okay.
And keep in mind, this amount includes the action the council has already taken, a couple months ago.
Right, for the paramedics.
No, with the police officers.
Police officers.
Right,
And
right,
Paramedics
yeah.
was last year, police officers, right.
So in this situation, if we say we, through 271, I know, Shane, like you said, generally you don't want to use that money on ongoing expenses, but like Mike said, we understand that it's hard for everybody, and so the city's going to use some of their rainy day funds to help pay for things. And then all of a sudden it brings it down to a monthly or a yearly cost for each household of $50 or something like that.
So
You're
you're suggesting taking half from fund balance?
Yeah,
No, I know you've already taken out but I'm saying in addition to paying for the fleet.
He's on one timing at 271, 543.
I'm saying maybe you one time
addition.
it to the total of 500 due or whatever it is, I'm proposing that as an option.
So taking half from fund balance this year and then half through truth and taxation.
He's not even
capture.
saying half. He's just saying
You're saying
making it even 500,000.
500,000 even? Okay.
Throwing out ideas, you know what I mean? Just like.
That's what 500,000 would look like right there.
Now, if Fruit Heights, for example, doesn't want to participate this fiscal year 2023, then that's another 400,000-ish, right, that we'll be dealing with next year, just so we know. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we would need to add that to this number. That's why we're trying to get them to make a commitment before July 1st.
Yeah, and I know we asked you how long it takes to create a fund balance that we have, and you've said it takes 20, 30 years,
Well,
right, to build up. It's only 150,000, 190,000 every year.
Last fiscal year, last audit report is the fund balance in 21 only increased by $120,000.
120,000 a
It just
year.
depends. You can't say how long it takes because it's just
Well,
varies.
right,
We'd had a really good years since the pandemic, and then we had a bad year last year.
2020 was probably $800,000.
Yeah.
Okay, right, because it was,
Do
we
you-
supported our
It seems
businesses.
But that's a good point. Like Dean's done a good job building up a cash, and here we don't want to just spend it all in one go. We got to find other ways to
Right, I'm
cut,
just saying,
but-
if we, 500,000 this year, another 900,000 next year, I mean, that's going to deplete it pretty quickly.
So just, what's our sales tax increase been this year from last year?
We've got a slide on that. Give us a second and we'll.
Okay. Actually, I'd like to know what it is from 2020 up to 2022. I think you got. See what our sales tax increase has been.
Seems like it was going so well, and it's still going well, but just not as well as it was maybe 2 years ago. But if you go to Smith's, I can't find half the things I want, so I don't know who's buying them or.
So you're spending less?
I am, because on things
So
I
our
really need.
projection for this year is 7 million sales tax.
That's FY '22, that's where we are year-to-date. If these ones highlighted in yellow
If they
Yes.
play out that way.
They play out that way.
are the same as previous year.
So
Okay.
we would be looking at almost 700,000 increase in sales tax this year from last year.
Not an increase.
But
Well, over last year.
over last year, yeah.
Over last year.
But last year, current budget already programmed that increase in there at $6.8 million. So the increase is from 6.8 to 7.2.
So there is an increase
So-
of about 400,000
But
there.
and that's if those 4 months are the same as before, but if you look at the previous 8 months, you're almost 100,000 more, 120,000 more a month, right?
Yeah, that's
I
why
mean-
I mentioned that one at 50% over prior year.
Yeah, yeah.
That one really surprised me.
That's crazy, but I mean, so even if you played out, if you look at those numbers and you're at 20%,
Yeah.
you're
may
still
be able
talking
to
pretty good.
Project at a higher number.
yeah, okay,
That's why I mentioned that hopefully we could modify that one.
yeah. And so that should help. Okay, I got it, I'm good with that, okay. And that may get it down to,
4 or 5?
4 or 5, yeah. And then it's maybe a little more palatable to take this lower number, not have to do a tax increase, or if we decide we need, it's just a much smaller. Okay,
Council member
okay.
Abby.
Thank you. I guess I have kind of a procedural kind of question, and I'm not even sure who to direct this to, so I'll just kind of ask it, and I'm sure the right person will know the answer. We've talked about a lot of different things and keeping some things kind of at the status quo as far as personnel and operations, but where in the process, or is there a point in the process when we look at like slimming down? Like I've kind of looked at a few things, and maybe that comes into micromanagement, and it's not the part of the council to do this, but I just think like clothing benefit or like not even just fleet maintenance and replacement, but maybe slimming down our fleet, because don't we have about 170 vehicles-ish? Is that, I mean, that seems a lot for, what are we, 10 square miles?
Well,
I know a
think-
lot of them are like
Yeah.
ambulances and police and other things, and I'm not necessarily saying that is what has to be done. I'm just wondering if we ever look at those kinds of things and see where we could tighten down for maybe a year or two.
We do look at that, and I guess I would just say that, throwing out those numbers is, I feel like, a little bit of a red herring, in that I think we ask the departments to tell us what they need, and I think if there isn't a need for a vehicle, they report that. Now, I don't go in and look at Josh and say, which vehicle, is this vehicle needed, is this vehicle needed, is this vehicle needed? We certainly can do that, and if, as a council member, you have every right to ask those questions and ask the department head or whoever's over vehicle or whatever it is to report why that is needed. I think there's only so much blood you can get from a turnip. And I know everybody says everybody can cut, and there's things we can do without. But I think what we ask them to do is tell us what is the least amount of equipment you need or salary you need to pay to operate this city in your department to the best of your ability, to have the best people we can get for the reasonable amount of money, and that includes those kinds of things. So yes, absolutely, I think it's completely in your purview to ask those questions and to get answers. And so, in your case, I would ask you to bring those concerns or even questions to myself and the department director, and we can go walk through those things. And then, if there's places we can cut, we want to do that too. That's not something we want to do. And I don't think we have too many vehicles, but I can't say specifically this is the right amount of vehicles for 10 square miles. That I don't think that's a number that can be generated. I think we ask, and again, I think Public Works, Josh Belknap can say these are the vehicles we need, and these aren't things we can't. And now, can we do without for a couple of years? Of course, we can do things like that. But we've done that in the past, sometimes with fleet, and we've gotten behind. And 2 years ago, the council made a decision to up the amount of money towards our fleet, so we don't get behind. And that would, in my opinion, undermine that effort in that situation. So that's a very specific example. But lots of things we can do differently. Clothing allowances, things like that are benefits of the employees, and we want to be very careful when we do things like that to not take away a benefit that, if it's justified, let's do it. If they're getting too much for boots and things that they need to use at the city, we want to do that. But also, I personally would be hesitant to do something that's going to make $1,000 difference in a $1 million problem when that's going to maybe send an employee to a different place. Things like that I want to be very careful about. But I welcome those conversations, and I'd love to have them. And I know that all of our department directors would love to be able to clarify. They'd love to clarify the reason why they do need these things. Chief Erickson would love to tell you why he needs all the things that he needs, which it's a very expensive insurance policy. But,
right.
So anyway, sorry, long answer, but we'd love to have those conversations.
So I appreciate that. And sorry, just one sec. I just want to, and I don't want to say anything. I have 100% confidence in our department heads. So I definitely wasn't questioning any of their judgment with that question. Just wondering, where in the process maybe that falls in. And then just before I stop talking here, I just want to say that as far as taking money from power, I mean, we saw some of the balances on the other kind of utility type things that we work with, and that they are, I don't know how Dean put it, we're planning on taking in less than we're expending. Is that correct? On like the water. And so aside from being hesitant to take from those ones, I am very hesitant to take from power, specifically just because of what we learned tonight about the different projects we have upcoming. If we have money in power and we have projects we need done, I feel like they should be going towards power. And additionally, just saying, I mean, Prop 5 was the people of Kaysville saying, for whatever reason, that they don't have confidence in maybe our ability to spend that money correctly. And I don't think, I don't know how long ago Prop 5 was passed, but I don't think it's been long enough. I'm not sure, and I don't know that all of the intricacies of why that was brought forth, but I don't think I would feel comfortable saying, well, you trust us now, we're going to do this because we want to, I guess.
Well, and just to clarify, Nick, procedurally, like legally, we can't just do that, right? Would it go back? I don't know what the process would be to revisit Prop 5, but...
Yeah, I would have to look into that before. I would feel very reluctant at this point to give an opinion that we could just spend that money. I think it might be possible, but I'd have to do some research on that.
We'd have to look at it. Okay, yeah, because to your point, Abby, that was on the ballot, so
How
we'd
much
have to make sure.
How much, though, Dean, of the money that you're talking about, the general fund, changed because of Prop 5? Does that make sense? Like, this would still be a $771,000 problem, right? Because the Prop 5, they never used money from the Power Fund to support.
It wasn't the same amount every year as part of the problem. Power revenues were used as an economic development tool.
That's what, yeah.
For the business park. So property was purchased there, the park was developed, and then the property was sold at a profit, and we produced sales tax, property tax generators. So as an economic development tool, it was a great thing. I think what happened is, and it might be very similar to what we're seeing today, is how do we fill that operations gap in the general fund? And so the council at that time made a decision to transfer money from the Power Fund to fund police officers. And I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and said, you know, that's probably going too far. And I think that was really the beginning of Prop 5. I think, you know, how the Power Fund monies have been used over the years, I think they've been well used as an economic development tool and some other things. But maybe it was that one issue that probably was too much.
Okay. So like, for example, Bountiful, at the end of the year, they have a meeting where they discuss surplus, right? Does that surplus just go into the general fund?
As I recall, the way Bountiful does it is they advertise it up front saying, this is a return to your ratepayers, and here is the return. And they specifically list capital projects
that is going to be used for.
They say, you know, we're going to do the Rocket Park, I think is a Bountiful Park up there, and we're going to spend money to do the Rocket Park. We're going to do this and this, and they
itemize it.
Last time I looked at it, they itemize it and say, you know, this is a return to you.
Gotcha. And I think that, I mean, personally, I've always thought that was a wise way to do it. People feel and see the benefit of having their power company, and then they see that it's not just put into a slush fund where they can't actually see where the money went. Maybe that's
transparency for sure.
Transparency.
But to Mike's point, it would be nice to be able to have a department where you could pay interest to the department, to the city. I mean, you know, the money could be used effectively and wisely, so we can look into that.
You know, I think be a little bit cautious. I know as Brian projects out over the next 10 years, and I think as part of your discussion, there are an awful lot of capital needs
right.
in the Power Fund as well. So that's kind of the balancing act that you have to.
Right. At the same time, we'll have to have Nick look at that. Okay. All right, so you just need direction as far as what do we want changed, right? Or are we okay with the way you presented it?
I think based on what Councilmember Adams said, and if the council's in concurrence, we will use that one-time money for the fleet.
Okay.
And
is everybody okay with that, at least to start?
A good place to start? Yeah. Okay. All right.
And then the gap will be property tax increase as part of the tentative budget. Knowing that,
Councilmember
you know, that's a fund balance expense.
I just want to make it clear I'm not in favor of that.
Okay.
So, Mike, how do you want to cover the gap?
I can't say that now until you tell me what those unassigned funds are, because if it comes out that our unassigned funds are around $5 million and it takes us $700,000, then we still have 4.5, which might mean that's 25% of our budget. That's a pretty good amount of money to have in your unassigned funds.
Okay, so you want to see those numbers to
Yeah, I
make
want to see
sure
the
that we're
numbers.
not at the top of it. Okay.
And none of us are voting right now on
Right,
it's
right.
just direction.
I just want to work really hard not to do a tax increase. I mean,
I
I think
understand.
I think we budgeted for paramedics for the full year last year, and didn't we just start as of May 1st, or have we been paying that all year?
We had a lot of one-time costs, though, that we used instead of the salaries.
All right.
I am curious, though, just because it,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I think Councilmember Blackham's dollar, I think the dollars you just mentioned are almost right on. So let's verify that, Dean and Levi, before the next meeting. But
yeah.
I think you're pretty close to what you're saying is correct.
Well,
so if you want to think about what to do, I think you're really close.
And I really think if our income numbers, income tax, proper sales tax comes in the way I personally think they probably will, that's going to mitigate it even more. And so the number might be, half of what we're showing up there. That's my personal opinion.
Well, one of the benefits of going through truth and taxation has been for us too, doing it in August instead of June, we know a lot more. So we do know these. We can project these out. Like doing it in June, we don't know. Usually we don't even have that last quarter to be able to project out. So that's one more.
And just to be clear, for truth and taxation, if we have a hearing, we don't have to hold the rate. We can use last year's rate still, right?
You can do anything from what you advertise you might do down to
using last year's rate so that we're not capturing any growth, right? It doesn't mean we have to do that, but it does give us a little more time.
The concern, though, is you send out those postcards and you get folks upset,
right? Because they know it's possible. Right. Okay, all right. Okay, all right. Do you have enough?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You guys ready to move on? Are we okay moving on? Okay. All right.
Dean's ready for us to move on.
Yeah, okay. Human Resource Manual Amendment discussion. John had a great idea. He had an idea about a Christmas bonus incentive program that we've looked at and we want to discuss. John, do you want to?
Well, I just want to hear what everybody thinks about. I mean, does everybody understand the thought?
I do, but I look at it as another, I don't think it's our responsibility to save. People should be able to save their money out of their own budget. This is another unfunded mandate. And we're already discussing a gap. It's just increasing the gap.
It does increase the gap, I
Yeah.
mean, it's a great idea, but it's in addition to what we've.
In other years, this might be something that would be great. This is not the year.
Did you, that was my question, was like originally when I proposed it, I think I proposed it be, they could do up to 500, we would match up to 500, which I think would decrease the honest. And then also I was hoping that each department head would find a way to fit it inside their budget versus, and did any of that happen, or was it just?
No, I mean, we haven't asked them to do that. I think that's going to be difficult, I'll be honest with you, this year. I'm not saying we can't do it, and I think having all of them finding, up to $10,000 to $20,000 would be maybe challenging. But you also can do nothing. You can do what was proposed here. You can do less money, and you also could say, well, let's take out, instead of 4.75% of cost of living, let's do 4.5% cost of living, and we're going to do this benefit. So you could make it a revenue neutral thing if you wanted to. But.
And I know Mike doesn't like that because it affects retirement, and I think that's probably what the majority of people said. I wish I did talk to some of the department heads. Everybody seemed like they liked it, the idea of it. But I don't know, maybe people would prefer it to be. I think Mike's really good at saving his money. I'm not. So I'm the guy that wants a tax return. I'm not the guy that's excited when it's at zero at the end. I want a giant tax return. I know. I'm
so
sorry.
You let Uncle Sam.
You're dealing with Jen. I'm barely on the border. Yeah, I don't care. It's that's they're helping me save. Right?
I love it when I have to pay.
But that's probably why I liked this program as an employee, because I felt like the time that comes around, the Christmas time when it comes around, is the time when you're oh man, I wish I would have put aside a little bit of money. Again, you don't have to do it, but it's an option, and then the city helps you and matches it. I just think it's a great time to be able to give. I know that, in talking to Chief, he said that he does that for his employees already. Currently, I think he said he bought all of his employees Beats headphones. Now, for me, it's kind of and maybe he's going to regret telling me that, but it's well, where are you getting that money to do that? Is that out of your budget? If it is out of your budget, maybe they didn't want Beats headphones. Maybe they want, you know what I mean? I don't know. I guess maybe we want to leave that up to them, but that also creates an issue where oh gosh, all the firefighters got Beats headphones, but the accounting guys gave me a watermelon, Dean, or a basket of fruit or something, so I don't know.
I mean, just after that, painful discussion we just had with Dean, I just can't see doing it this year. I mean, I like where you're going. I like the sentiment behind it. You're doing a matching. I just think with everything that we got going on, I don't think we can afford it. That's my personal opinion.
Any other discussion on this item? If not, we'll move on to council member reports. Anybody have any reports?
I do not.
Anybody?
Let's see. We're switching the 4th of July. We talked about having the event. What's it called? The
devotional.
Yeah, we talked about having the devotional here. We're moving it back to Davis High School.
What?
That's about the only thing that's changed.
Wow, they came on board.
Yep. Yeah, Davis High and former Mayor Hyatt is going to be heading that up, I believe. If anybody has a sweet convertible that they want, that's listening, that wants to drive around our...
Do we have a speaker for it yet?
I don't think so. Maybe Mayor does. That's all I have to report.
Is Jordan close? If Jordan's close, can you run up here? I'd like him to tell the council a little bit about this customer portal. If he's close. He may not be close.
I don't think he's here. He is.
He was, at least.
He's watching hockey, probably.
I would be.
He's the great wizard behind the curtain.
Yeah, he is the great wizard. I don't know. I think it's really, it's something that we've got coming up. And okay, there he is. Jordan, will you take a minute or two and just tell him about the customer portal?
Absolutely. The customer portal is a web-based website that we'll be going to that pulls in all our kind of newly created network of meters, smart metering. So we got the water system and the electric system that have smart meters. We gather that data, and then we tie in also the express bill pay. So it's kind of creating one little portal for everyone to go see usage down to the hour. It'll be the next day that you can see the breakdown of the hour, but it will be very live, basically.
For each of your homes?
For each of your homes. Yeah, if you had 2 meters, that you'll be able to see those and then switch back and forth between water and...
So I can see how much my grandkids are costing me when they come and visit.
That's right.
When's that going active?
We expect to go live in June.
We could see Councilmember Blackham flushing his toilet at his house.
You can.
No thanks.
His was the example we were looking at.
My guess is it's only number 2s. So don't flush the ones.
Okay, I think, yeah.
But no, it's really cool.
Well, we're testing right now. It's kind of live.
Anne Marie,
we just got like
don't put that in.
branding up on it. It looks wonderful.
You'll literally be able to see.
That's cool.
Compare, one day to the next, months. There,
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can compare your neighborhood too, right?
Yes. Yeah, you can kind of do a close.
Oh, so we can shame them.
I hate that. One of my
I don't
neighbors
like
has
that.
solar, and he totally screws up that report that I get that says, "Oh, you're using too much."
Chart's doing great.
How are we going to save $771,000? Do you have any ideas on that?
Let's see what I got on my wall.
Don't
flush. Throw it into the coffers.
Thanks, Jordan.
You got it.
And then maybe one of these days he can come give us an example. Just show it.
Yeah, that'd be great when we're online to actually show,
We really, one of the problems with these things elsewhere is the usage. We need to get people using it. And so whatever we can do, we need to push this out. We need to do all that we can do to get
Kind of what I wanted Jordan to come here, give these guys a heads up. We need to start really showing people how we've paid for it. We've got it. We've put the meters in.
It's always true. Once you realize, once you have education of what you're doing, you can change behavior.
No, just power. You bet.
Yeah, that's how you change behavior.
Yeah. And this will provide it very clearly and easily.
All right.
And also pay bills.
We might not want to know what
we're,
yeah.
Thanks, George.
Ignorance is bliss.
Appreciate it. Anything else? City manager report.
I don't think I have anything tonight. Thank you.
If not, I'll motion to adjourn.
I was so motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're through.
Hey,
I want all of you employees to know that these guys shot down your Christmas bonus.
Appreciate it.
We didn't want to swap it. Everybody wants it for the new holiday.
Right.
It's like, oh, great, another day off.
Yeah.
But it's like, how
If it's
much
gonna
can we do?
difference in the COLA.
We could fit a day on that.
No, I get that like people who are good at saving maybe can rationalize that, but like if you give me a little less money.
Are you not good at savings?
No. I'm a salesman. I make 100, I spend 101. It's like